Thank you, Mr. President. I'm not quite prepared to make all of my remarks about the amendments, but I did happen to be in the chambers, and Senator Durbin was kind enough to open the discussion on two of my amendments, which I greatly appreciate. And I'm somewhat disappointed, however, my colleague, who is not completely informed about these amendments. I'll start with the amendment that attempts to more accurately define what an earmark is. And my colleague, Senator Durbin, went to great pains to continuously describe this as the DeMint amendment, the DeMint language. Unfortunately, I'm not sure if he knows, but this is the language that our new Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi, has put in this lobbying reform bill in order to make it more honest and transparent. I believe she's got a very thoughtful approach to this. She campaigned on this along with a number of Democrats and Republicans, that we do need to disclose and make transparent every favor that we do for an entity. And I'm beginning to get disappointed in this process, because I did believe in a bipartisan way that we were going to come together to try to do things to show the American people that we were going to spend their money in an honest way that was not wasteful. But as we look back on some of the scandals, Mr. President, the first one that comes to mind, obviously, is the Earmarks scandal, using Indian money to try to buy influence on Capitol Hill. And yesterday, there was a very thoughtful amendment by Senator Vitter that would have attempted to get the Indian tribes to play by the same rules that everyone else in America plays by, that they have regulated contributions that are disclosed. The reason we had the scandal with Earmarks is Indian tribes are not regulated by the Federal Election Commission. They can give unlimited amounts, unaccounted for, and it corrupted our process. And the amendment yesterday just was very simply said, let's just have everyone follow the same rules. Yet that was voted down primarily by my Democrat colleagues. And I hope they'll rethink that. We would like to bring that amendment back to the floor and make sure there's adequate discussion, because it's hard for me to believe that anyone who wants to clear up the corruption in Washington would overlook that a big part of the corruption was caused by unlimited donations by lobbyists from Indian tribes. And now we've got another problem. We're talking about earmark reform, and Mr. President, we use language here many times in the chamber that I don't think Americans know what we're talking about. But when we're talking about earmarks, we're talking usually about lobbyists who come and appeal on behalf of some organization or business or whatever for us to do them a favor with taxpayer money. And if whether it's a municipality that wants a bridge, it may be a defense contractor that wants a big contract from us. And if we put that money in an appropriation bill designated just for them, it's an earmark. And that is a federal earmark, Mr. President. Nancy Pelosi had the wisdom to see that a lot of the problems that we've had came from lobbyists asking for favors that went to federal as well as state and other types of earmarks. What other corruption comes to mind as we think about last year? Duke Cunningham. The corruption there was a federal earmark. And the underlying bill that we're discussing today would not have included that. It would not have been disclosed. My colleague, Senator Durbin, said that should not be disclosed, when most of the problems that we have come from that particular type of earmark. And I think if you look at this in a big picture, as we're talking about trying to let the American people know how we're spending their money, and when we take their money and designate it as a favor to different people and entities across this country, we want to let them know what we're doing so that we can defend it, so that they can see it. But what is a dirty little secret here in the Senate and the House is, while we're making this big media display of reforming earmarks and lobbying, 95% 95 out of every 100 earmarks is in the report language of bills that come out of conference, which are not included in the current discussion of transparency for earmarks. So the case my dear friend, Senator Durbin, has made today is that we want to disclose these particular favors for 5 out of every 100 earmarks in this Senate. That's not honest transparency. If we're going to do it, let's look at what the new Speaker of the House has asked us to do. If we're going to go through all this process, if we're going to change the laws, if we're going to try to tell the American people that now you can see what we're doing, let's don't try to pull the wool over their eyes. Speaker Pelosi is right. And many in this chamber know that I don't often agree with Speaker Pelosi. But she is the new Speaker, and one of her first and highest priorities was to do this ethics reform bill right. And at the top of the list is, if we're going to talk about transparency to the American people, let's be honest and show them the way we're directing the spending of their money. And I agree with her, and I'm here to defend her language on behalf of the Democrat colleagues on the House side, that let's not try to pull the wool over the American people's eyes and tell them we're cleaning up all the scandals, when what we're doing here would not have affected the Abramoff scandal, it would have not affected the Cunningham scandal, or any of the scandals that we've been talking about in this culture of corruption here in this Congress. Let's at least be honest with the part of, with this reform that we're saying is going to clean up this place. And we're not being honest now. Speaker Pelosi has the right idea. Let me just mention one other thing. The other amendment that my colleague was nice enough to bring up is what we call the automatic continuing resolution. I've been in Congress now for 8 years. This is my 9th year. Every year we get towards the end of the year, and we haven't gotten all our appropriations done. And it comes down to the last minute, and they're saying we got to vote on this, and we got to pass it, or we're going to shut down the government. And so we create this crisis. And then we don't know what's in all the bills. They're just coming out of conference, and we have to vote on it. And most of us go home in December and found out all the earmarks, all the favors that were put in these bills. We find it out later because we're not even given time to read it. We create this crisis and force people to vote on bills that they don't know what's in it. They force us to vote on things that we know are not good, that shouldn't be in it, so we won't close down the government. I just think we need to stop playing this game at the end of the year that forces us to accept what lobbyists and members and lobbyists and staff have worked out that we don't even know about. And if we're really serious about decreasing the power of lobbyists in this place, we need to take the pressure off passing bad bills at the end of every year. And this is just a very simple idea. And you will notice, despite what has been said, we passed a continuing resolution at the end of the last year and didn't pass our appropriation bills. And I think everyone, as they look around, they could see the country is still operating just fine. The thing we don't have is 10,000 new earmarks. And Mr. President, I would just like to make a case that we need a system that, if we are not able to have ample debate and discussion about appropriations, that we don't have all this fanfare about closing down the government every year and scaring our senior citizens and our veterans that something's not going to come that they need, is let's just have a simple provision that if we can't get our work done, if we can't agree on what needs to be done and what should be in these bills, then we'll just have a continuing resolution until we can work it out. And we will fund everything at last year's level so that there's no crisis, there's just responsibility. And that's what's missing here. When we put things in crisis mode, we can't see what needs to be seen, we can't tell America what needs to be told about these bills, and we pass bills and only find out later that we've done things that embarrass us and diminish the future of our country. This is a simple amendment. I'm very disappointed. My Democrat colleague, who wants to help us, I believe, sincerely, clean up the way lobbying works in this place by making things more transparent to the American people. These two amendments, one that will disclose all earmarks, and the other that would take the crisis out of every year and allow us to pass responsible legislation. Mr. President, we'll have more to say, and I'm sure other members will, before these amendments come to a vote. Unfortunately, I've been told that my colleagues don't even want these bills to come to a vote. They want to try to table them so that we will limit the debate. But I'd like to reserve the rest of my time for this and yield back right now, and we'll discuss a little bit more about these two amendments after lunch.